One thing that the video game industry really seems to have trouble with these days is companies try to buy their way to making good games. They seem so much more focused on taking a game and trying to make it profitable rather than focusing on making a good game that will eventually lead to profit. This is what I'm talking about. Square Enix planned on selling 6 million copies of Tomb Raider in the first month. They needed to sell 5 million just to break even. My little sister could have told them that's not going to happen. Hey, we can totally sell 6 million copies of Tomb Raider in the first month, right? That's not a completely ridiculous goal, is it? No, dude, we totally got this. Because even though the most commercially successful Tomb Raider game since 1999 only sold 4.5 million copies in 3 years, we got Conan falling in love with Laura. Wait, fuck. We got Conan falling in love with Lara. So it's all good.
Let's face it, her name's Laura.
These companies have terrible budget problems where they throw away so much money on trying to make their games successful when they should be throwing that money at writers and developers to make successful games. Apparently though, instead of writing awesome games with incredible stories, these companies would rather be focusing on ridiculous ideas to steal even more of your money.
When you are 6 hours into playing Battlefield and you run out of ammo in your clip, and we ask you for $1 to reload, you're really not very price sensitive at that point in time.
As someone who enjoys a game with a good story, this really rubs me the wrong way. We focus way too much on chasing the best looking games or the games with whatever gimmick is currently popular, rather than the best stories. Art can do some amazing things for a game, of course, and video games over the years sure have enjoyed indulging in the possibilities that this medium provides, but I don't really care how nice a game looks if it's going to have a mediocre story with dull, unimaginative characters. I'm looking at you, Bible Adventures, or better yet, any Sonic game ever. It's kind of like when Vice visited North Korea and they brought them 50 or so tiny, terrible samples of food that wasn't even really food.
It's just matter. It's like fried matter.
Trying to show that the country wasn't actually doing that bad. They can dress it up all they like, but if you don't have any actual food, there's no missing that. You can dress up your game as much as you like, but if you don't have any actual substance, characters, gameplay, fun, no amount of marketing or billboards will make your game successful. Hey, EA, Square Enix, all you want to know what will make me buy your game? Nudity. No, wait. Characters. Give me a cast of interesting characters that I can attach to, and I'll be hooked on playing your game if just for the sole purpose of finding out what happens to them. Modern game devs these days never give their protagonists any depth. Modern military shooters especially seem to think the only way to make an interesting character is by making them look as realistic as possible and then killing them off if the plot ever goes too slowly. What the shit, Call of Duty? Okay. The first time you killed me, maybe a bit of an interesting unexpected twist. But when you go through multiple games and kill off main protagonists multiple times in each game to the point where they have the life expectancy of a pedestrian in Grand Theft Auto, I get a little less fazed when a comrade of mine dies. See what I did there? Give me more characters like Elizabeth or Booker or the Lutesses, characters who are witty, funny, and enjoyable to be around. Or just give me more people like Captain Walker who make me depressed as fuck. What makes these characters so memorable is they have character arcs. They don't just start off being one military badass who always knows what he's doing all the time, except when he gets murdered. Even when you do have someone like Booker who is the classic military vet with a history of patriotic service and a little mass murder, even he's able to feel emotions other than inspiring military courage. You play through BioShock Infinite because you want to know as much as possible about each character, who they are, where they come from, what their future will be. When you don't know whether their future will end in death in the next 5 minutes or not, you become really interested in their fate. Seriously, COD, I'm not making that up. It's not because of how many polygons you can give them to make their face as realistic as possible. That literally has no effect on whether I'm interested in your game or not. I don't need to be the controller to feel immersed in a game. Either go out and find yourself a Ken Levine or someone, or start hiring good writers like the ones that made Planescape Torment one of the best storytelling experiences to date. These are the games that get me immersed, not this. The sad thing is when we get a bunch of indie developers who beat the AAA guys at their own game. We get all these games, or games that come out for $5 or $15 on Steam or XBL Arcade, and they get called pretentious. Reviewers call them pretentious because they think the story goes too far in the other direction, calling the stories too vague or too symbolic or too complex, or to the sophisticated reviewer, too up its own butt. Instead of being about as complex and predictable as the Three Little Pigs, these games are so open to interpretation and symbolic that sometimes the message goes right over the player's head. The moments where these games really shine, though, is where they establish lovable, intricate characters. Seriously, look at Thomas Was Alone. This is a game that was initially developed by one guy who made every single character a colored rectangle, or square, but you know, all squares are rectangles, so I'm just calling them rectangles. Anyway, this is a guy who made me care more about colored rectangles than most AAA devs can do with actual human beings. When we do get AAA games that come along, like Far Cry 3, Spec Ops: The Line, or Bioshock Infinite, that actually have interesting characters and stories, we become enthralled. I hate cover-based third-person shooters with a passion, but I love Spec Ops: The Line for its story, characters, and interesting plot, and heck, they got $60 from me. These games are contenders for Game of the Year and constantly make top 10 lists. They sell well, are plenty profitable, and are just overall great games to play. Don't get me wrong, not all games rely on crazy, complex, intense, thrilling stories to make you enjoy their game. Super Meat Boy, FTL, and even some big releases like Skyrim are all fun because of the gameplay elements rather than the story. But think if Skyrim did go the extra mile and had better voiced NPCs and characters with more depth, then you'd get something like Far Cry 3, a game that received universal acclaim, got plenty of great ratings, and made Ubisoft plenty of money. Hear that, EA? You could still make plenty of money without making everyone want to throw rotten fruit at you. We already have games with great graphics, great mechanics, and addicting fun gameplay elements. Let's take a little time to focus on developing characters and making interesting campaigns. I'd really be more inclined to actually buy the next modern military shooter if the story missions weren't just there to show off new multiplayer features. You know, multiplayer features like dying,